My name is Hannah. I am 16 years old. At this age, people dream about their lives, about the future, love, success. But my dreams started to change the day I realized that some houses may seem respectable from the outside, but inside they are not. Our house has a very respected name in the city. My father holds executive power in a large company. When people hear his name, they stand up straight. At the office, his word is final. What he says becomes the rule, but no one sees the fear behind those rules. My mother also works in the same company. When she comes home tired at night, she is often silent. Sometimes she softly says that the office atmosphere is getting tense. People think twice before breathing around my father. He is strict, very strict, military-like. Discipline is his way of control. But with me, he is different. He considers me his perfect daughter, his pride. We go jogging early in the morning. We play tennis, sometimes we hike. Healthy living is our common ground. Being with him sometimes made me feel maybe people were wrong. Maybe my father wasn't that bad. My siblings' experience is completely different. My sister, 18 years old, is burning inside with resentment. She hates our father, a hate that doesn't scream but slowly becomes poison. And my brother, 14 years old, fights over every little thing. The house is often loud with voices, doors slam. I am always caught in the middle. I thought time would make everything right. I was wrong. That day was my father's birthday, 46 years old. There was no cake, no balloons, but his phone was filled with congratulations. Messages, calls, respect from the office. Everything seemed normal. Then a notification popped up on my phone. At first I didn't understand, then a second, then a third. Local groups, my heart sank. I opened the app, and what I saw in front of my eyes my mind refused to accept. My sister, naked, in 4 different local groups. The caption was just one line. Happy birthday, Dad. My body froze, my hands started shaking. I thought maybe I was seeing things wrong, but the pictures were clear, the name too, the groups, everything was real. I ran to her room, I cried in front of her, trembling, I begged her, please remove this. This will ruin not just Dad's life but all of ours. Her eyes showed no remorse, only a cold silence. She deleted the pictures. But by then it was too late. My mother had already seen everything. She didn't listen to a word I said. She called Dad immediately. I wanted her to stop to talk first to understand it, but she didn't. The strange part was that we all had lunch together that day. Mother and sister sitting across from each other. No shouting, no questions, as if nothing had happened. That silence, it was eating me from inside. Then my father came home. I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Anger, shame, humiliation all at once. He grabbed my sister, slapped her. When she spat at him, the belt came out. Mother just watched, neither stopping nor speaking. I stood there, my feet seemingly rooted to the floor. I couldn't do anything. That day I saw my father cry. The man who could intimidate the whole company was broken. There are 400 people working in the company. About 120 are from this city. The city is small. People know each other, which meant that my father's subordinates had seen his daughter in that state. The next day at school was even heavier. Some people laughed, some silently stared. I had always been a serious girl. Good grades, piano, church attendance, but now my identity was tied to someone else's sin. Father didn't come home that night. Mother was hysterical, convinced he was cheating. He had once made a mistake before, but this time there was no proof. The house was full of questions, no answers. And my sister. Just seeing her now filled me with disgust. I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning. What had happened was only the start of decisions to be made. Some faces were about to show their true colors, and some reckoning was still to come. When humiliation becomes public, revenge doesn't come immediately but grows quietly in the silence. After that night, the meaning of home changed. Before, it was just a place where we lived, but now it had become a place where everything felt heavy. Even the air seemed to move like a burden. Every room was hiding its own story, and no one was ready to hear the full tale. Father didn't come home the entire night. Mother sat on the sofa, sometimes crying, sometimes silent. She would rub her fingers, pick up her phone, then put it down again. She wasn't just missing Dad, she was watching her life fall apart. And I was watching everything without a word. My sister was locked in her room. No sound came from there, but I could feel that a storm was raging inside. Or maybe it was complete calm. The thought made me even more anxious. My brother started spending more time outside the house, at friends' homes, in the streets, anywhere, just away from home. The next day was a school day, but it felt like I was walking into another world. Walking through the corridor, I could feel every eye on me. Some people laughed deliberately, some went silent at the sight of me. Some looked at me with pity in their eyes, a look far more painful than mockery. I broke my routine. The piano keys now felt heavy. Even going to church started feeling difficult. It seemed like everywhere I went, people were seeing me tied to a mistake that wasn't even mine. I kept asking myself, can even decency become a punishment? Father returned home on the third day. His face was hard to recognize. The man who once stood upright now walked stooped. His eyes held the anxiety that only comes after humiliation. Mother tried to speak, but he only nodded, as if words had become meaningless to him. That night no sound came from their rooms. No fighting, no talking, just a long, deep silence, and sometimes silence is more painful than screaming. The effects of the office were clearly visible at home. Calls on Father's phone no longer came as before. Messages decreased. Sometimes he would pick up his phone and then put it down while staring at the screen, as if every notification reminded him that he was no longer the same. The city was small. That had always been true, but now it felt more real. Everything was visible. People met, smiled, but their eyes carried questions. Questions that were never asked but were clearly felt. On the third day, my sister came out of her room. There was no shame, no fear, no regret on her face, only a strange calm, as if she had done what she needed to do. Mother looked at her, trying to say something, but the words got stuck in her throat. "Now everyone knows the truth," my sister said, and nothing more. That sentence echoed in my mind. Truth. Which truth? The one everyone saw, or the one no one dared to ask? There was no relationship left between father and sister. My brother drifted even further from him. Mother was caught in between both, and I was silent, because I had realized that the greatest power in this house lay in silence. One evening, Mother quietly said that Father was considering resigning from the office. Hearing this, it felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. Father's entire identity was his power. If that went away, what would remain? That night I saw Father sitting alone. He was looking at his own hands, as if realizing for the first time that these hands were not meant just to command. At that moment, I understood that every tyrant is weak at some point. And then my thoughts began to change. I started remembering small things, little words from my sister, Mother's silence, Father's anger. All of it began to connect, as if puzzle pieces were slowly falling into place. For the first time, I realized that what my sister had done wasn't just a reaction of anger. Perhaps it was the result of something else. Maybe it wasn't just revenge, but a message, or maybe it was just the beginning. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark thinking, if everyone is wrong in their own ways, then where does justice lie? And if justice is nowhere to be found, then someone has to create it. When the truth starts to appear in fragments, the most dangerous thing is waiting. Time does not stop, even if life seems to pause. Days went by, but the atmosphere at home remained the same, heavy, oppressive, and filled with unseen lines. Every person was trapped in their own space. The only difference was that some traps were self-imposed while others were hidden. Father no longer spoke much. The man who once commanded every word now only spoke when necessary. His eyes held a strange tension, as if he was always ready for someone to confront him with his past again. Mother hovered around him, sometimes offering tea, sometimes asking aimlessly if he needed anything, but Father's answers were always brief. My sister had completely changed. She no longer screamed or fought. She smiled, but that smile frightened me. A smile that carried either the arrogance of victory or the weight of something broken. Even while living in the house, she no longer seemed a part of it. My brother came home late at night most of the time. Sometimes he went straight to his room. Sometimes he didn't even make eye contact with Father. It felt as if we had all become strangers to each other, even under the same roof. And I remained the quietest of all. I realized that speaking was now useless. Words had lost their value in this house. What remained was observation. I watched who stayed silent, who panicked at what moment, who reacted to whose name. I overheard Father talking on the phone. He was speaking to a senior at work. His voice lacked the usual strictness. He was justifying himself, explaining, "This was huge for me." Father never gave explanations, he only delivered decisions. Mother stayed awake often at night. Sometimes she would pick up the Quran, sometimes her prayer beads. Sometimes she would pause outside my sister's room, then return. Fear was in her eyes, but I now understood that this fear was not just about losing Father. It was about reputation, social standing, and questions from society. Things at school gradually began to act normal. People laughed less, but they didn't stop watching. I felt like I was no longer just a student. I had become part of a story everyone knew, but no one asked about. During this time, I started remembering other things. Old things. Father's excessive control. My sister's years of anger. Mother's constant silence. All of it started to connect, as if a map was slowly becoming clear. For the first time, I realized that perhaps we were not just victims of a single incident, but part of a long chain. One day my sister tried to talk to me, just one line. "Are you judging me?" I didn't reply, because the truth was I wasn't judging her, I was trying to understand her, but perhaps understanding is the hardest task of all. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room thinking, if everyone is wrong in some way, then who decides what is right? Father called all of us to the dining table one day. It was the first time he wanted to see all of us together. His voice was tired. He only said that things were no longer as they used to be and perhaps never would be. No apologies, no accusations, just an acknowledgement. At that moment, I felt that after everything breaks, a strange silence emerges, one from which either a new beginning occurs or a very carefully thought-out end. And in that silence, I also began to understand that some reckoning cannot be left to time. Some accounts are written slowly, quietly, without noise, without witnesses. I was no longer just watching. I was remembering. And those who remember sometimes also decide. When everyone begins to see themselves as innocent, that is when the most dangerous decision is made. With time, things don't get better, they just become routine. And routine teaches a person to live with everything that once seemed impossible. The same was happening in our house. No one shouted, no one fought, but everyone was quietly engaged in their own battles. Father now woke up early in the morning and left the house without speaking to anyone. Before, his leaving came with noise, orders, instructions, warnings. Now only the door would close. Mother would follow him, sometimes asking if he would have breakfast, sometimes reminding him about a doctor's appointment. Most of the time he didn't listen. His position at the office remained, but the power was gone. This worried Mother more than Father. To her, Father was not just a husband, he was a shield, a name, a protection. And when the shield develops a crack, fear spreads to every corner of the home. My sister's behavior became even more indifferent. She seemed to be outside the house even while being inside. Phone always in hand, coming home late at night, sometimes smiling for no reason. Her smile didn't bring comfort, it carried the chill of a decision, as if she had locked something away inside herself. My brother didn't want to face Father anymore. If he heard his voice, he would change rooms. His stubbornness had transformed into silence, and I was slowly becoming the most alert, because when speaking becomes a danger, understanding becomes protection. I began to notice small things, Father stopping at a certain name, Mother leaving some sentences incomplete, Sister avoiding eye contact when asked questions. These were not coincidences, they were all connected. One day I saw Mother crying alone, completely silently. Her tears didn't make a sound, but their weight filled the whole room. When she saw me, she quickly wiped her face as if it were a mistake to see me. At that moment I realized Mother was not just a character in this story, she was trapped in it too. Father's phone now occasionally received strange calls after which he would close himself in his room. His voice would be low, words measured. I felt he was trying to manage his life in a different way, but some things have to break before they can be managed. At school, my image slowly shifted, from that girl with problems at home to that very quiet girl. People spoke to me less but watched more. I also realized that silence makes people uneasy. One evening my sister asked me, "Do you think everything will be okay?" There was no hope in her question, only curiosity, as if she wanted to know what might happen to what she had started. I didn't answer, because for the first time I felt answering was not my responsibility. That same week, Father made a decision to distance himself from some family members, to reduce contact with certain relationships. It was new for him. The man who had always been in control was now letting go of control, or perhaps learning a new way to control. One night, Mother told me that the hardest thing in life is deciding which mistakes to ignore and which to remember. At that moment, it felt like she was explaining something to me, or perhaps to herself. And then my thoughts took a new turn. I realized that what had happened could not be accounted for by one person alone. It was a web in which everyone was trapped in some corner, and if the web is shaken, not just one, but all fall. I was no longer just watching. I was connecting the pieces. I was making guesses. And I realized that some truths are so fragile that exposing them all at once causes destruction. That's why they must be placed slowly, at the right time, in the right place. At night I often looked out the window. The city was the same, lights, roads, people. But I knew that in just a few days, even for this city, nothing would remain the same. Because when the secrets of a house collide with the outside world, it's not just the house that changes. Those who believe the story is under their control are often the most surprised at the next turn. Time passed, but in the house the weight of every moment seemed to grow heavier. Every person remained silent in their place, yet behind every gaze something was hidden. Every face was telling a different story, and I was slowly connecting all those stories. This was not just observation, it was becoming a strategy. Father spoke even less now. The man who once displayed authority in every matter now simply stood in his place. Sometimes his eyes would stop and stare into the distance, then he would pick up his phone and scroll silently. I sensed that he was realizing his mistakes, yet perhaps he could not fully understand that this was only the beginning. Sooner or later he would face the biggest shock, and I was gradually starting to understand this. My sister's behavior had become even stranger. She stayed in the house but sometimes seemed invisible, smiling in messages at night, exchanging glances during the day and then keeping distance. For the first time I saw that she was calculating her actions, every move, every look, every message, as if she were seeing how much damage could be done to whom. My brother was now completely in his own world. He didn't want to appear before father. Before he would argue, now he had gone silent. His stubbornness had turned into a silent rebellion. And I was delving deeper into understanding that every person, every face, and every word in this house was part of some trap. Mother had also completely withdrawn into herself. The daily household routine, father's control, my sister's smiles, and all of it passing through my eyes, it had become unbearable for her. At night, I often saw her sitting alone on the sofa, eyes closed, hands clasped, lost in thought. Perhaps she too knew that nothing would remain normal anymore. One day at school, something even stranger happened. People were no longer just laughing, they were observing, quietly measuring, watching secretly, talking behind backs, stopping as soon as I looked their way. I realized that the social pressure had begun, and the biggest effect of this pressure would not be on them, but on those inside the house. One evening, my sister asked me again, "Do you understand that every face is not what it seems?" I didn't answer. I knew this question was only a test in which no mistake could be made, and whoever errs could lose everything. Father had relaxed some rules at home. Previously, his control was based on office decisions, but now he was monitoring even home interactions. Yet this control was part of a new strategy that no one could yet understand. I slowly observed that the dynamics between father and sister were only superficially normal underneath. A psychological war was ongoing. Every small thing, every comment, every silence carried meaning. Another incident made everything even more complex. My sister casually said something hidden during a phone conversation with her school friends and enjoyed their reactions. I saw that people were confused, and the doubts inside them stuck to the family dynamics. Everyone had become unsure, and this uncertainty was dangerous, and I was only observing. One day, father called everyone to the dining table, but this summons was different from before. This time he came with silence and awareness. His face was slightly stern, slightly calm. In his eyes there was no longer just the old strictness, but understanding and calculation behind the expression. For the first time I felt that father was no longer merely reacting, he was planning. At that moment, I began to realize that the dynamics in the house had shifted. What was once clear had now become unclear. What had once been visible was now controlled by invisible forces. And this invisible control was no longer held by a single person. Every person, every face, every silence was now creating its own account. I also began to understand that some things which seem insignificant on the surface are actually signs of real power. A glance, a pause, a smile, or even silence, all had become messages. Messages that only the one who understands could read, and I was beginning to understand. At night I often looked out at the city from my window. Lights, roads, and people all seemed normal, but I knew that this normality was only on the surface. The chaos within had grown even more intense. In just a few days this chaos would become visible. And when that time came, everyone would think everything changed in a single moment, but in reality it would be the result of a long-planned strategy. When even the moon can deceive in the darkness, the real weight is only for time. The weight of time had shifted from the house onto my shoulders. Days and nights felt the same, yet everything inside was shifting. Every person, every face. Every silence was now visible to me, and I realized this was no longer mere observation, it was time for planning. Father had completely changed. The man who was once only anger and orders now thought silently. Every decision, every pause, every glance, everything had become calculated. Mother now cried only in silence, but I knew that even her tears had become part of the plan. And my sister, her confidence and smile were now just a mask. I knew that inside she was also plotting, but now this game was under my control. At night, when everyone was asleep, I quietly left my room. Phone, notes and old records, everything was in my hands. Every detail I had observed since part 2 was now transforming into a strategy. This revenge was no longer just mental, the time for action had come. The next day began like any other normal day. My sister left for school smiling, my brother stayed in his room, Mother was in the kitchen, and Father was busy with his office work. I worked discreetly, calculating every move. Every action was now deliberate. I remembered the day my sister had posted the photos. At that moment I thought the world had ended. But now I understood, every mistake's reckoning doesn't happen in a single moment. It is taken slowly with perfect timing. Returning from school in the morning, I began a small plan. I gained access to my sister's phone, her friends, groups, messages, everything was observed. The comfort zone she had relied on had now become a trap. Every message, every smile, every comment was now on record. I noted who reacted in what way. Every person was revealing their true nature. And this record was not only for my understanding, but also for showing everyone when the time came. I also monitored Father's routine. The man who once needed confidence in control was now falling prey to small daily triggers, like minor office misunderstandings or slight confrontations that would normally be ignored. Slowly, I observed that his reaction patterns had become predictable. Every emotional trigger produced the same response. This knowledge had now become a weapon. I subtly involved Mother as well. Her silence and anxiety were slightly manipulated, making her feel she had some control, when in reality she was just part of the plan. In this way, every person in the house unknowingly became part of a perfect setup. And then the biggest moment of revenge arrived. It was nighttime. My sister and brother were in their rooms, Mother silent on the sofa, and Father in his room with his files. I quietly stayed in the living room with the laptop screen ready. Messages, screenshots, comments, and old photos I had observed since before. I projected the laptop screen onto the TV. The reactions were instant. My sister's mask fell, my brother's surprise and guilt, Mother's shock and Father's disbelief. Everyone saw the same thing. Everything I had observed and collected was now in visual form before them. The most shocking part, the photos and messages that had once destroyed the household were now on the screen for everyone to see. My sister's confidence, which she had flaunted, was exposed. Every smile, every hidden comment, every deception, everything was revealed. Father looked at me for the first time. There was both anger and shame in his eyes, but I remained silent. This revenge was breaking their expectations, exposing their power, and most importantly, making everyone realize that accountability comes only through time and observation. Mother folded her hands, but I knew even her tears were part of the plan, a human touch. This was not just an act of revenge, but a confrontation with everyone's mistakes and hypocrisy. My sister remained silent, consumed by guilt. My brother, who had once ignored everything, now understood that family dynamics were not only superficial. Father, his control was now only an illusion, and I finally stood firm. I said, "All that has happened, this is only the result of observation and time. Everyone's choices and actions are on record, now the truth is before you." Shock and realization spread across their faces. Everyone understood that whatever had happened, its result was now unavoidable. This revenge was not just about the photos, it was the consequence of everyone's psychological and moral choices. In this moment, everything became clear. The real meaning of revenge is not punishment but confronting the truth. Everyone saw their true nature, and human emotions, guilt, shame, regret, and reflection, were active in each of them. I quietly stepped back. No cheers, no noise, just silence, and that silence was enough for everyone. The atmosphere in the house was now more conscious than ever. Everyone became responsible for their actions. My sister never again showed the same level of hatred or arrogance. Father revised his control and authority methods. My brother openly expressed his emotions. Mother became more empathetic and aware. And I continued observing, learning, and finally established a truth. What is understood in silence over time becomes the greatest action. The true impact of revenge was not just to punish, it was to show everyone the door to justice and self-awareness. And this impact became permanent in all of them.